Good afternoon, everybody. One of the things Karen and I heard a lot over the course of the past year and a half is that it was very important for state government to live within its means. The same message that families, small businesses, and other people deliver to themselves and to one another every single day. We're here today to talk about a state government that lives within its means here on Beacon Hill. After several months of weeks, days, of working with leaders in our administration, we've come up with a plan to address the $768 million deficit we inherited for fiscal year 2015, which ends on June 30th. The plan, which we will be filing later today with the legislature, lives up to our promise that we will not raise taxes, cut local aid, or draw down on the existing stabilization fund. The proposal we'll file includes about $254 million in revenue and about $514 million in spending reductions. The hiring freeze we put in place is one place we started on the first day we got here. We also pursued a series of contractual freezes that have also helped in the short term. There is approximately $150 million in 9C cuts, which are things that the executive branch can do within the context of its own operations. There are other initiatives that involve independent agencies and the capture of reversions, so-called unspent money. And to set an example, the governor's office is taking a 10% cut. We've also included some budgetary solves with respect to the Mass Health Program. One is to begin the process again of doing eligibility redeterminations, which are actually required under federal law. Massachusetts, since the meltdown with the connector, has not done eligibility determinations. We're going to start doing those again at the end of this month. In addition to that, we're going to hold on spending state money on services that CMS is not actually authorized at this point in time. And finally, we're closing the gap through a variety of revenue solutions as well, some of which include increased federal revenue, a tax amnesty program that we would like to discuss with the legislature, and then again, the one-time use, which we've talked about before, of excess capital gains funds to direct those to the general fund instead of the stabilization fund. We inherited a spending problem. We said that to you several weeks ago. Even with all the adjustments that we're making and proposing here today, state spending year over year in fiscal 15 is going to go up about 7.7%. That is simply not sustainable over time, even in a great economy. We certainly have a good economy. Many people would say a very good economy. As a result, state government needs to figure out how to spend within that construct, and we intend to make sure that it works, that it does, and plan to work with the legislature to get from here to there. With that said, I'd like to turn this over to Lieutenant Governor and talk a little bit about local aid.
Thank you, Governor. And as you can see in our plan, we've done a lot of work with our cities and towns. Obviously, as two former selectmen, myself and the legislature, we know that any adjustments mid-year during the fiscal year are very difficult to take, especially for our cities and towns who have already budgeted, already planned for the expenditures through this fiscal year. So in this plan, we have held our cities and towns harmless relative to local aid and school aid, and we feel that is the right commitment, and it is the promise that we made. I'd also say, relative to the most vulnerable, we have protected those that are served through the Department of Children and Families, as well as our homeless. And this has been a very difficult process, but we feel this is the right approach mid-year. I do want to thank Secretary Christine McClure, who has done an amazing job hitting the ground running with her team, has helped us make a lot of early decisions to rebalance the current year budget, and I'd like to have her say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor and Lieutenant Governor. The plan that we are announcing today is the result of a collaborative effort between my office and other cabinet secretaries. It is a responsible and sensible plan to balance the gap with 5 months left in the fiscal year without impacting core state services. It also allows me the opportunity to focus our attention on the fiscal year 2016 budget, which is due to the legislature a month from tomorrow. Thank you.
Questions?
Can you say exactly how many millions of dollars of cuts are in this plan, and what exactly they will be cutting?
There are about $500 million in cuts of one type or another. Some of them are literally programs that were funded that never got started. Some of them are administrative squeezes. Some of them involve not spending money on programs that operate under federal mandates where the federal government hasn't actually signed off on them yet. The eligibility redetermination process at Mass Health, which again is something the state hasn't done for over a year and should be doing every year on an annual basis, will certainly save money as well. But there are a wide variety of initiatives associated with this, and I'm sure if we want to discuss that in more detail with the Administration and Finance Secretary after this, should be happy to do it.
Any pretty good?
We're touching about 300 line items, but 60% of those line items are still funded either at FY14 levels or above.
Is this a reduction of, when you say things that CMS has not authorized, are you saying that there are healthcare services or covers that people are currently getting that we will no longer be offering under Mass Health?
No, that's not right. There are things, though, that until we get authorization from CMS, we're basically going to hold on going forward with those initiatives.
What kind of things are you talking about?
Say again?
What kind of healthcare things are we talking that we will be holding and not going forward on?
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. There's different rate plans. There's different like alternative payment methodology plans that CMS, their programs that are in the works with Mass Health. They just haven't been approved yet, and they will probably not be approved this fiscal year. So it's money that we don't plan to spend this fiscal year. So it's not something that we won't do. It's just it's not going to happen this fiscal year.
But I'm just trying to get a sense of what sort of services people might otherwise be anticipating that they now will not be getting this fiscal year. It can't just be money in the ether.
I don't think it's services that people are expecting to get this fiscal year because the plans have not been finalized. So,
Or approved by the
or
Fed.
approved, right.
Governor, if you don't mind, I have a mass transit question. How did we get to
So
the
surprised to hear that.
how did we get to the point where our mass transit system cannot handle a harsh winter? And what's your plan to get us out of this mess?
Well, first of all, this is not just a harsh winter. It's the largest and most significant snowstorm ever over the course of the past 10 days in Greater Boston, combined with a significant amount of Arctic temperatures. The big issue with the transit system at this point in time is the utility and availability of a variety of trains and a lot of those trains, actually some of them date back all the way to the blizzard of '78, 40 years of service plus or minus. And you may all remember that the T put this out for bid, I think about 2 years ago, finished the procurement last year, awarded it to a company that was going to assemble these trains in Springfield, and it's currently in litigation. My hope, of course, is that litigation ends quickly enough so that we'll be able to get ahead with the project of replacing those old trains.
Well, Beverly Scott was suggesting this morning that this is a function of lack of available revenue, lack of investment in the infrastructure. You campaigned for the repeal of the gas tax indexing.
Yep.
And have said no new taxes. Where are we going to get the dough to fix this problem?
Well, first of all, I've been here for 3 weeks, so give me a little bit of time to work my way through that one. No one disputed the 3-cent increase on the gas tax, including me. The issue for us at the time, and I continue to believe this to be the case, is the legislature wants to raise taxes, and the governor wants to raise taxes. They should be held accountable by the voters and expected to sign to do that. I'm planning to spend a fair amount of time with Secretary Pollack over the course of the next few weeks to make sure that we make the kinds of decisions with respect to managing and administering the T so that people don't have to deal with this. I think what happened yesterday, especially for the people who got trapped on the red line, was terrible. And I've actually talked to many folks in the transit environment who are equally concerned about that. Felt they did the best they could with their decisions at that point in time. They didn't want people walking along the Longfellow Bridge in the midst of the cold weather. The train was warm, people were safe. One of the big things I learned yesterday that I didn't know was that it's actually possible for the third rail to freeze, and that that's in fact what happened, and as a result of the freezing of the third rail, the trains couldn't get the charge that they needed from the third rail to actually get over the bridge. That's not the kind of thing that's going to happen every day, but we clearly need to make sure that if we have another big storm, we're prepared for it.
You guys are talking about whacking $40 million on transportation in this package too, though, right? Can you talk about where that?
First of all, it's transportation writ large, it's not T, and the T stuff, Secretary Pollack assured us it would have no impact on service, and a piece of it is actually revenue. It looks like spending to the state, but it's actually more revenue being generated by the T than originally budgeted.
What's it gonna be? Where's the $40 million?
Do you want to talk specifically to that one?
It's a combination between the MBTA, which is a smaller piece, and then the Department of Transportation at large. A good chunk of that is realized through vacancies, job vacancies, it's the majority of it. And the other chunk is due to increased fare revenues. So that means that the transfer from the general fund over to the transportation fund can be reduced by $40 million.
Secretary, in terms of the 9 CPEs, what are the specific areas where you'll be cutting?
So it's pretty equally across the board, with some fluctuation. Some of the secretariats came in voluntarily at a higher level after they did their own review of their state agencies, but on average it's about 1.9% across all executive state agencies.
And do you expect that this to have an impact on people who use state services?
Because most of the cuts are focused on administrative savings and those programs that have not yet got off the ground yet, it's going to have very minimum impact to core state services.
Governor, did you just...
The core state services, you mean very minimum impact to the average citizen who uses state services?
Yes.
Governor, did you just...
You called what happened on the T unacceptable. With the plan to replace these train cars years out, what's an acceptable plan moving forward if something like this were to happen again?
We're planning to have this conversation with the Secretary over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Any ideas that come to mind?
I'd like to have this convecation with the Secretary.
Governor,
Once it stops snowing.
Governor, do you have any sense of
She started Monday, by the way.
storms' impact on
Yeah.
local? Do you have any sense of the storms, impact on local budgets? The mayor said yesterday the blizzard was around 10 million or so for Boston. Do you have any sense, over a wider part of the state, how much that's going to, blow up the local budgets, and how much, and will that add to the deficit?
Well, you may recall that when we had this conversation a few weeks ago, we included the snow and ice budget as one of the wild cards that we didn't know exactly what the right amount was going to be. I actually looked out the window at the time and said, there's no snow on the ground, that's a pretty good sign. I've heard about that a lot from people in the administration over the course of the past few weeks. We're currently working on an assumption that part of our budget, part of what we're going to file with the legislature is going to be an additional $50 million for snow and ice removal on top of what was already budgeted. The question we need to figure out, working with our colleagues in local government, is what did they in fact budget for snow and ice? What was their historical spend on snow and ice? And what does the number look like by the end of the year? But we won't have the answer for that probably until March. Or even April.
You're going to do like a sub-budget? Is that going to be part of this, the extra 50 million?
Well, the $50 million we're filing is to deal with the state stuff.
Governor, did you just say that you didn't have a problem with the 3-cent gas tax?
Yeah,
So it was the indexing?
yeah.
So
I've always
are
said
you
that.
Are you open to then raising taxes?
No.
In terms of
We raised
raising the gas
taxes. We just raised taxes by 3 cents on the gas tax. I'm not open to, I've said all along that I think state government needs to learn to live within its
So
means.
doesn't all this, does this, all what's going on this past week, underscore the situation with the infrastructure and whether the T and bridges, highway, does this give a kick to what you plan to be doing going forward now?
I certainly think that we have a lot of work to do in transportation, and as I said, I'm planning to spend some serious time with Secretary Powell talking about that over the course of the next few weeks.
Well, one thing surely you both already know is that the Mass Taxpayers Foundation pegs the underfunding of so-called state of good repair at a couple of $100 million a year. Do you have an idea? Do you have a plan for making up that dough?
I said all along during the course of last year that I wanted to start putting pay-go money into the transit system every single year, $25 million a year on top, 25, 50, 75, and 100, and that's basically my plan coming into this.
Can you explain what that means?
It means creating a a state of good repair budget for all intents and purposes that would be worth a certain amount of money in the operating budget of state government that could then be used by the transit system to fund the kinds of stuff that historically either hadn't been funded or we've been borrowing money to pay for when we really should have been paying for it out of operating money.
Still sounds like a big gap between the dollar figures that would provide and what they say they need.
Well, you gotta get started somewhere, and by the way, we did just raise the gas tax by 3 cents. We should remember that.
Governor, yesterday,
Last
you
question,
urged a
everybody.
lot of the state employees to come to work using public transportation. In light of what happened last night, and in light of the fact that the Boston mayor is urging people to take public transportation to come in for the parade tomorrow, do you regret your decision from yesterday, and what are you telling people about tomorrow?
We're actually gonna have a conversation later today with Secretary Pollack and the transportation folks to talk about the rolling rally tomorrow. We will have a plan.
Should they still have
Public
the parade?
transportation, and you're gonna urge them to take
Well,
public transportation?
I think people in certainly greater Boston are expecting that the state and the city are gonna have a parade. So from my point of view, I would love to have the parade maybe a few days from now, but one of the things we need to keep in mind is the team just won the Super Bowl. I don't know how long the players are gonna be around. We probably ought to do this when they are here, because I think the parade would be a lot more interesting to people when there actually are players on the duck boats.
Governor,
Thanks,
when you
everybody.
came to work
We need to get
yesterday,
going.
Governor, when you came to work today, do you think the roads around Boston, around the State House, around Boylston Street, where the parade is gonna be, are ready for a parade at this point in time?
You know, the decision about the parade is more of a mayoral issue than a governor's issue.
What do
And
you
I'm not
think?
talking about you, but I drove around, one of the reasons I put the 3-hour delay on state workforce coming in this morning was I drove around for a while last night and was concerned not so much about the main roads, but about some of the secondary roads and the sidewalks, okay? Having driven around a little bit this morning, a lot happened between last night and this morning. And we're looking forward to do what we need to do to help the mayor make the parade happen tomorrow.
You didn't
Okay.
answer my question. Governor, you didn't answer my question about yesterday. Do you regret your decision from yesterday?
Don't you have 10% cut affect your own salary?
At least I didn't sleep myself.